Hello, cycling fans. Welcome back to Cycling World. Great to have you here once again. Before we dive into today's analysis, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and drop your thoughts in the comments because what we saw from Jonas Vingegaard at Paris-Nice has completely changed the early season narrative. His performance did not just secure the overall win, it sent a clear message across the peloton. One of the strongest reactions came from Danish cycling icon Brian Holm, who openly admitted he was surprised by how dominant Vingegaard looked in his first race of the 2026 season. Speaking after the race, Holm explained that his expectations were much lower heading into Paris-Nice, especially considering the complicated winter the Visma leader had endured with a training crash and illness delaying his start to the year. For Holm, even a podium would have been a strong comeback performance. Instead, Vingegaard arrived and immediately took control of one of the toughest week-long stage races on the calendar with authority. From the very beginning, the Visma leader rode with calm confidence, always well-positioned and surrounded by teammates who controlled the pace with precision. The turning point came during the decisive mountain stages, where Vingegaard showed not only strength but also tactical clarity, launching a long-range attack that completely reshaped the general classification battle. From that moment onward, the race was effectively decided. His rivals struggled to respond, the time gaps grew rapidly, and by the time the peloton reached Nice, the yellow jersey was secured by a massive margin. For many observers, including Holm, the most impressive element was not just the winning margin, but the control and composure Vingegaard displayed throughout the week. Paris-Nice has always been considered one of the hardest early season tests for GC contenders, a race where positioning, endurance and tactical awareness all play a decisive role. That is why Holm's reaction carries weight. In his view, Vingegaard's victory was not simply a strong debut performance, but a clear reminder of the level he can reach when fully prepared. What makes Vingegaard's Paris-Nice victory even more remarkable is the context surrounding his delayed start to the season. Originally, the Danish rider was expected to open his campaign earlier, but a winter training crash in Spain followed by illness forced him to adjust his schedule and miss the UAE Tour. That disruption shaped expectations across the peloton, and even among analysts like Brian Holm, there was a sense that Paris-Nice would simply serve as a controlled return to racing rather than a dominant performance. Instead, Vingegaard delivered something far beyond that narrative, immediately imposing himself on the race with the authority of a rider already in peak form. Throughout the week, the Visma leader displayed the kind of consistency that defines top GC contenders. He never looked under pressure, never appeared out of position, and always seemed to be racing with a clear understanding of exactly when to act. His dominance was built gradually across the stages, but it truly became undeniable once the race hit the mountains. There, Vingegaard combined patience with precision, waiting for the right moment before launching decisive accelerations that none of his rivals could match. One stage in particular stood out, where his long-range move not only shattered the GC group, but also effectively ended the overall battle in a single effort. By the time the race approached its final stages, the result no longer felt uncertain. The yellow jersey was firmly under control, and the rest of the peloton shifted focus toward individual stage ambitions rather than the overall classification. For observers like Holm, this was perhaps the clearest sign of Vingegaard's authority, the sense that once he made his move, the race simply adapted around him. In a race known for unpredictability and constant pressure, that level of control stood out as one of the defining features of his performance. Beyond the time gaps and stage victories, what truly stood out during Paris-Nice was the reaction from the peloton itself. Riders quickly recognized that Vingegaard was operating on a different level throughout the week, and that recognition showed in the way the race unfolded once his dominance became clear. After his decisive mountain attack, the dynamics of the GC battle shifted completely. Instead of constant aggressive moves, the rhythm of the race became more controlled, almost cautious, as rivals focused on limiting losses rather than challenging the yellow jersey directly. That shift in mentality reflects the respect Vingegaard commands within the bunch, especially when he reaches this level of form. For Brian Holm, part of what made the performance so impressive was the nature of Paris-Nice itself. Often called the race to the sun, it is widely regarded as one of the most demanding week-long stage races on the calendar. The combination of unpredictable weather, challenging terrain, and relentless pace makes it an early season test that only a small group of riders can realistically target for overall victory. Holm pointed out that perhaps only a handful of riders arrive with genuine ambitions of winning, while the rest simply aim to survive the week. From that perspective, Vingegaard's dominance becomes even more significant. There is also the historical context to consider. With this victory, Vingegaard became the first Danish rider ever to win Paris-Nice, adding his name to a list of champions that includes some of the greatest stage racers in cycling history. That achievement alone underlines the scale of what he accomplished. For Holm, who understands the demands of the sport both as a former professional and as a long-time directeur sportif, the result serves as confirmation of Vingegaard's status among the elite GC riders in the world today. His analysis reflects not just admiration, but recognition of a performance that redefined expectations for the early part of the season. Looking ahead, Vingegaard's performance at Paris-Nice also raises important questions about the rest of the spring campaign and how Team Visma, Lease bike, will approach the upcoming races. Winning such a demanding stage race in this fashion does more than secure an early season title. It reshapes the expectations around the rider and the team for the weeks that follow. Within the peloton, performances like this rarely go unnoticed. Rivals begin adjusting their tactics, teams start planning differently, and the narrative around the season quickly evolves. Vingegaard's dominance in France sends a clear signal that he is already operating at a level capable of controlling major stage races. For Visma, this is exactly the kind of statement they hoped for after a winter that included setbacks and uncertainty. The delayed start to the season had raised questions about Vingegaard's early form, but Paris-Nice answered those questions decisively. More importantly, it showed that the team structure around him remains as effective as ever. Throughout the race, Visma controlled key moments with discipline, positioning their leader perfectly and managing the race with the calm efficiency that has become their trademark in recent years. Another important element is the psychological impact such a victory can have on the peloton. When a rider wins with this level of authority, it reinforces a certain aura of control that can influence how future races unfold. Rivals often become more cautious, aware that attacking a rider in this kind of form requires extraordinary effort. That psychological edge has always been part of cycling's tactical landscape, and performances like Vingegaard's in Paris-Nice help establish it early in the season. Ultimately, what this race demonstrated is that Vingegaard does not need a long run-in to reach competitive intensity. Even after a disrupted preparation, he arrived ready to dictate the rhythm of the race. That ability to quickly reach top form is one of the traits that separates the strongest GC riders from the rest of the peloton. In the end, Jonas Vingegaard's victory at Paris-Nice stands as one of the most significant early season performances in recent years, not simply because he won the race, but because of the way he controlled it from the decisive stages onward. In a race known for its difficulty and unpredictability, the Visma leader imposed a level of authority that left very little room for doubt about the final outcome. By the time the peloton reached Nice, the general classification battle had already been settled by a margin of several minutes, a rare scenario in a race where the competition is usually extremely close. For observers like Brian Holm, that dominance is what made the performance so remarkable. Paris-Nice has always been a race where only the strongest riders can realistically compete for overall victory. Weather conditions, demanding terrain, and the constant pressure of early season racing often create unpredictable outcomes. Yet throughout this edition, Vingegaard never appeared uncomfortable. From the opening stages to the decisive mountain attacks, he rode with composure, clarity, and tactical confidence. That combination of physical strength and race intelligence is precisely what defines the very best GC contenders in modern cycling. The historical significance of the victory also adds another dimension to the story. Becoming the first Danish rider ever to win Paris-Nice places Vingegaard in a unique position within the sport's long tradition. When looking at the list of previous winners, it becomes clear that the race has been dominated by some of the greatest stage racers in cycling history. Adding his name to that list reinforces the idea that Vingegaard continues to build a legacy among the elite riders of his generation. More importantly, this performance arrives at a moment when the season is only just beginning to unfold. If Paris-Nice is any indication of the level he can reach in 2026, the months ahead promise to bring more decisive performances from the Visma leader. For now, the message sent from the race to the sun is clear. Jonas Vingegaard is back, and when he reaches this level, the entire peloton takes notice.